This has Islander fans absolutely buzzing, as the Daily Faceoff has ranked their top 75 NHL affiliated skater prospects, and there are a lot of Islanders on that list, which obviously is really good for the future. It also makes me beg the question, is the Islanders prospect pool getting underrated by the Daily Faceoff and other rankings? I know that seems crazy to say, especially after last video where we said the Islanders were ranked 6th in the entire NHL after previously in the previous year getting ranked 25th. It is a huge step up, but just when we talk about how many prospects are ranked so high for the Islanders, it really makes me wonder, and I'm not necessarily saying this is the case, but I'd love to know your thoughts on where the Islanders prospect pool has been ranked in the comments below. Before we get into the players and where they are ranked, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It is almost September, which means we are getting closer and closer to actual Islanders hockey being played. And our goal is 2,000 subscribers before then. If you are already subscribed to the channel, appreciate all the support. Now let's talk about the first prospect ranked on this list, and what really made me happy is it's Matthew Schaefer. The Daily Faceoff has Matthew Schaefer at number 1 on this list. I still personally believe the number 1 prospect in the NHL right now is Demidov, partially because just how NHL ready he is, but I do think it is a lot closer than a lot of people are giving him credit for, and it's nice to see Matthew Schaefer hit number 1 on one of these lists because he does deserve it. And this article goes on to talk about how he is a defenseman who does so much right, and especially what really impressed me is when you compare his write-up to some of the other defensemen who are really high on this list. Schaefer just shows no weakness, and what's really exciting about Schaefer is, yes, he did not play that many games last season, and you can look at that as a negative, but you can also look at it as a major positive, meaning there could have been more, and there is more that he can discover in his game that is already incredibly complete. He is an incredible skater, as we've already seen. Really good puck mover, and it's going to be really exciting to see whether or not Schaefer makes the Islanders. He's one of the top prospects, obviously, in the entire NHL. And one thing I do want to fight back on a little bit is I've seen on social media is people like, oh yeah, well, Schaefer's the best prospect right now, but just wait until next year. He wouldn't even be top 5 in next year's draft. Schaefer, in my opinion, other than Gavin McKenna, is the best player not yet in the NHL. He has the most potential out of everyone, I think, outside of Gavin McKenna. I think next year's draft is really impressive. It is too early to talk too much about it. I like a lot of players in that draft, but other than Gavin McKenna, I think it's really unfair to really say that these players are levels ahead of Matthew Schaefer. I don't think this draft was nearly as weak as people thought it was, and I think when we see Matthew Schaefer practicing and playing his first preseason games with the Islanders, along with seeing guys like Michael Misa, who's ranked 3rd on this list, be sure to check out the full list on Daily Faceoff. You will see, and I think that this draft was a bit underhyped. It wasn't as deep as other drafts, but there was definitely talent available, and as we're going to talk about as we go deeper in this list, the Islanders really cleaned up this season with the draft. The next player for the Islanders, I think this is why the Islanders pool is ranked a bit lower than some other pools, is Callum Ritchie, and he's at 19. So you have to wait a full 18 more players before you get the next player for the Islanders. And this makes sense. The top prospects pools, the Sharks have Sam Dickinson. The Blackhawks, I think they have 3 players in that range before. They don't have a guy in like the top 5, but they have like a 16, 17, 18 type situation. So it makes sense while they're ranked higher. And I think the Blackhawks actually had 8 players on this list. The Islanders, spoiler alert, they have 5 players, the same 5 players we've been talking about all summer. The order is a bit different than what I would put it. Again, I think Victor Eklund is a better prospect than Callum Ritchie, but the Daily Faceoff has loved Callum Ritchie for a long time, and it's really easy to see why. And when it comes to the Islanders prospect pool, I think perhaps one of the weaknesses is that a lot of these players are a few years out. They're not exactly NHL ready now, which makes them harder to project. Callum Ritchie is on the cusp of being NHL ready. In fact, I think for several teams in the NHL, he would be starting in the NHL this season. Whether or not he plays for the Islanders, it's going to be a really interesting situation. I actually really like that he's going to have to prove himself ahead of other centers rather than just making the team, which would be the situation with the San Jose Sharks. And like this article says, while he might not be the most flashy offensively, I think his game translates very well into the NHL, and he's also shown a big commitment to being an all-around player, which is exactly what you need in the NHL these days with a center. If you want to play center in the NHL, you're going to have to be competent defensively. I think gone are the days that you can get away with playing poorly on defense as a center just because you put up a lot of points. It doesn't work. We've seen the issues with players like Trevor Zegras. See how he does in Philadelphia. I'm rooting for him even if he is on a division rival, but that just shows you like the issue that some of these centers play who don't commit to defense, and the fact that Callum Ritchie has already shown that that is not his game is very encouraging for Islander fans. The next prospect for the Islanders, we have Cole Eiserman at 25. And this is where this list gets a little straight. Again, I love Cole Eiserman. He is a really strong prospect. I will say it is odd that he is ranked higher than Cole Hudson. They played on the same team for Boston University. Cole Hudson is not an Islanders prospect. But this is where I say, with these prospect lists, there are always going to be odd numbers. This is why it's so encouraging that we now have two different lists that are both ranking the Islanders prospects, all five of them, in the top 30. Because with these lists, sometimes there are guys that one guy just doesn't really like that kind of tanks them down. Typically, you have a group of people kind of compiling these together based on what they think of the players. So to now have two lists that both say the same thing about the Islanders prospect pool, I know recently there was something from Elite Prospects that actually put Cole Eiserman significantly lower than the other two lists. He is a bit more polarizing than the other guys for the Islanders, but to have another list respect him really adds a lot of confidence I have in this Islanders prospect pool really being something special. And again, I think what's so interesting about them having 5 of the top 30 prospects in the NHL, on top of the fact that that means their top 5 prospects are better than a lot of what teams have in their entire prospect pool. Just one of them, Cole Eiserman, is pretty much, he would be the best prospect, I would say, in half the NHL's pools, and he's already third in the Islanders, at least according to this ranking. It is really encouraging, but the other reason why I think this 5 number is so important is when you think of a core in the NHL, a core that you build around is typically 5 players, and to really have a core of prospects coming up together is really exciting, especially when you consider the old core is still there. When these players come up and they're on their entry-level contracts, Barzal is still going to be there. Sorokin's still going to be there. Horvat's still going to be there. You still have a lot of these core guys still there to really create something special, which is why I think there's something so unique about the Islanders prospect pool. Yes, teams like the San Jose Sharks and the Blackhawks have a lot of exciting prospects as well, but they kind of need those guys to be the core right away, because what they have right now isn't what you would call a competitive core. Well, the Islanders, even though they did not make the playoffs last season, their core was something that has done damage in the past. And yes, it has gotten older, but when you're adding 5 prospects ranked so high in the NHL to that core, it's really exciting. Next on the list, it actually had 26 and 27. So 25, 26, and 27 all Islanders prospects. Victor Eklund is 26 on this ranking. I think this is low for Victor Eklund. I am very high on Victor Eklund. I've been very high on Eklund for a while. I think it's crazy that he went so low in this draft. The same for Aitcheson, but just not to the same degree. This is really exciting for the Islanders. Now, I think the reason why guys like Eklund are ranked a little lower is I think the Daily Faceoff is a bit more focused on NHL readiness, which really makes me a bit more excited about Schaefer to still get the nod above Demidov. Yes, I still think Demidov has a higher chance at winning the Calder Trophy, but just for Schaefer to get that respect and really get the hype that he can be an NHL player right now is really exciting. For Eklund, we know it's going to be at least another year and a half until we see him with the Islanders. Still, this is a really exciting player, a prospect that I just think has so much potential as a winger. I think the other thing that kind of gets him undervalued is the fact that he plays left wing, but he plays an all-rounded game as a left winger. It's not like some of these prospects that get moved to wing because they are so incompetent defensively. He's one of those guys who has a work mentality. He works hard. The same can be said about Callum Ritchie, which makes it even more exciting about this future Islanders core, because we've got 5 players here. This future core, how many players in here are considered to be work like hard-working players. And then finally, Callum Aitcheson is 27th on this list. Makes a lot of sense. I think there is a lot to love about Callum Aitcheson. This article actually says they can't believe they managed to snag him with their 3rd pick in the 1st round. It really is ridiculous what the Islanders were able to do this offseason. I really think in the future, the same way like this season, we were talking about how teams are going to try to emulate what Washington did their last offseason. This offseason, no team was able to do it. I think we're going to see a same thing with a lot of rebuilding teams. Team like Seattle, stuck in no man's land, try to pull what the Islanders did this season. I just don't think it's going to be successful. It was a rare combination of feats. And keep in mind, in these prospect lists, players like Shabanov don't even count. He's not eligible. So that's another player who I think if he did count would be included on this list. There are a couple players on this list who are 23. He just ages out at 24. That's something to keep in mind and something that you see next season even more exciting for the Islanders because he's another player that you get to see right away. Actually has some Calder odds. Really going to be really interesting. As a final note, the NHLPA is having a showcase for some prospects in the NHL. This is a really exciting list. If you go through this full list from the Daily Faceoff, a lot of these names are on this top 75 list, which is why I think it's actually really funny. From the Islanders, yes, you have Matthew Schaefer. Good to see him getting on the ice anytime. But the other representative for the New York Islanders, which raised my eyebrow immediately, is Mark Gatcomb. I honestly don't know why he's attending this. Nothing against Mark Gatcomb. I really hope he fights his way into the lineup at some point. But he is 26. I know he had a pretty interesting rookie season this year. Wouldn't exactly call him a prospect. I assume perhaps Callum Ritchie was not available for this. Or maybe they picked Mark Gatcomb because he played last season. It's really interesting to have all these really talented players. Gabe Perreault from the Rangers, Oliver Moore. You have some of the top prospects in the NHL, Z Buum, and then Berkeley Cadden, and then Mark Gatcomb. Still going to be interesting. Always exciting to see Islanders players getting recognized. Let me know what you think about this list. How would you rate those 5 players in the Islanders system? The way I personally do it is I go Schaefer 1, then Eklund, Callum Ritchie, Cole Eiserman, and then I finish it with Aitcheson. But I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm your host, Patrick Nyland. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders!